I decided to do was Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. Yeah. And I chose this book because it looks like a pretty good book to read. It's pretty big. It's like 500 something pages. And like the main characters in the book are going to be Louis, which is like that main character in the book, and then he's got a whole bunch of siblings that come up, and his mom and dad. And it's a historical nonfiction, so everything in here is true, and it's just like a it's not an autobiography, it's just a biography about his life. And they turn it into a movie, actually. Yeah. So what happens throughout it is, like, it goes through his childhood and, like, how he comes up as, like, an Italian, like, migrant in America during the 1930s and 40s. And then eventually his brother enlists or becomes an officer in the Navy. And he's like, well, if my brother's going to do it, I might as well do it. So he tries to hold up. So before he like goes into the army, it was the Army Air Corps back then. Before he goes in the Army Air Corps, he was a Olympian runner. So like he went to the Olympics in Germany, in Berlin, and like he was gonna break the record for like the 4-minute mile before he decided to join. So once joined, he became a bombardier in like the B-24, which is a bomber during World War II. And eventually they have to go on a search party for a shot down bomber because they needed to go find it, but they didn't have their plane because their plane got broke down. So they had to use this other plane, and that plane is like not really flight worthy, but they still take it anyways, and eventually they go down due to like flight problems. So they get stuck in a raft and all this, and then eventually they get captured by the Japanese, and they get sent to a Japanese prisoner of war camp where they have to figure out how to live through life and all that. And then main conflicts like throughout the book is like dealing with the Japanese imprisonment of them, because like they weren't treated the best by them, you know. Japanese and the Germans didn't really treat their prisoners that well, as you can see throughout history. So eventually he goes to the historical Japanese test site, and they do all kinds of experiments on him, and experiments on other prisoners, and eventually some of his friends die and stuff like that. So some major themes of Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand is like just the capacity of what the human body can go through. So like he has to deal with being in prison and everything for like multiple years because this happened pretty early on in the war. And like he has to go through all the deaths that happen and also the horrible treatment that he withstands. And then there's also like the power of love and like how love affects your mind, because like throughout his entire imprisonment he's thinking about his like girlfriend / wife thing, because like they're sweethearts, and that's what kept him to strive. And then also the love of his family and how he wanted to give back to them. And then finally the last theme is going to be the atrocities of war and how war affects the human body, and like once you come back it's not always the same. And that's something that's actually a huge problem in today's life and our military.